saloons to graveyards where evil sleeps, they walk among secrets they keep. Nightmare hunters with souls ablaze, cleaning up this town through the dark haze. Ladies of the night with eyes of red, vampires in the alleys where good men dread, wolfmen howling beneath the pale moon, but justice is coming and coming soon. From saloons to graveyards where evil sleeps, they walk among us, secrets they keep. Nightmare hunters with souls ablaze, cleaning up this town through the dark haze. Cryptids themselves, yet they stand tall against the darkness, answering the call for every lost soul, every whispered prayer. They fight for the light in the midnight air. From saloons to graveyards where evil sleeps, they walk among us, secrets they keep. Nightmare hunters with souls ablaze, cleaning up this town through the dark haze. The night is young, the hunt begins. For against the darkness where hope never ends.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Nightmare Hunters Podcast. I'm your host, D.A. Roberts, and as always, I'm joined by my brother, Robbie Jed Rains. Doc couldn't be with us tonight. His wife is being prepped for surgery, so y'all keep him in your prayers. But it's good to have y'all here tonight. Before we jump into the deep woods and the dark hollows, I want to take a moment for our community. If you guys got a prayer request for yourself, for your family, for a friend, for someone that's going through a hard time, just let us know, because we lift each other up around here, and we're already got a few folks on the list this week. Harold and his family, keep your prayers on for them. Miss Lene, for Wyatt, for Doc, for Robbie. Just keep everybody in your prayers, and hopefully that things will get better for all of us. So, Robbie, how you doing tonight, brother?
Tired, but I'm above ground and breathing.
Well, you had a kind of a busy day.
Yeah, everything happened that could happen happened at once.
Well, unfortunately, those days happened, and in my experience, they usually happened right after somebody said the Q word.
Nobody said it to me, but I'm sure somebody said it with a day.
Somebody said it somewhere. I was training a rookie one time, and he insisted on saying it, and the rest of the night, I made him do every one of the reports.
Put him out of the car and make him walk.
There were a bunch of them. Well, I've got some exciting news. For the first time since I've been writing, and I've been writing for quite a while, for the first time since I've been writing, I've got 2 books that are currently at #1 at the same time. Mount Dora Incident is still #1 in Western horror, and the new one that just released, codenamed Wild Hunt Leviathan Down, is at #1 in Monsters and Creatures horror. So that's a first for me. I'm really excited about that, and And I got to looking in the Western horror. I'm at number one. Robbie's at number two, and I think almost every one of the Dark Frontiers books are still in like the top 30.
You mean Doc's at number 2?
Yeah, Doc's at number two. I'm sorry.
Yeah, not me.
We'll get you there. We'll get you there. But folks, thank you guys for joining us tonight. And before we start, I want to preface this with this is not directed at any one person, but we all know one. And this is just intended to kind of educate you guys on the kind of things to look for. One of the things we always try to do, especially in our situations when we've gone out in the woods, is we look for an explanation first. We don't necessarily immediately assume everything's cryptid related. We try to explain everything else, like when we were on Combs Ferry. Great example. First thing we did was what could put that deer leg or what could put that Missouri tree trout in a tree. We ran through everything. And even now we still say, well, it possibly could be something else, but it makes no sense that it would do that. So, you've got to approach every investigation with a certain amount of skepticism. Like Robbie and I've said on many occasions, you can't just walk up to a crime scene, look in the window, and see a dead guy with no visible means of how he killed himself, and go, "Yep, portals." You can't do that. You'll be peeing in a cup and probably put on administrative leave while they're trying to figure out what's wrong with you. You cannot just do that with an investigation. You've got to go through all the steps. And tonight, that's what this is all about. This is episode 413, The Anatomy of a Hoax, how fake cryptid stories spread and why they fool good people. So before you find the truth, you have to clear away the lies. Every mystery starts the same way, with a story. Someone sees something they can't explain, something moves across a trail at dusk, something stands just beyond the reach of the flashlight, or something screams at you in the timber when the world is supposed to be quiet. And for as long as people have been walking the backwoods in North America, they've brought stories like these home. Some of them are honest, some are mistakes, and some are just plain fear talking. And a very few, are the kind that make seasoned investigators stop what they're doing and pay attention. But in the last few years, something has changed. The stories don't just travel from one person to another. They didn't just spread slowly through campfire talks or hunting clubs or ranger stations. They just exploded. They went everywhere at once. And suddenly, the truth had competition. Because now, anyone with a phone can create a creature. Anyone with a keyboard can invent a sighting. And anyone with a little time and a lot of imagination can build a hoax convincing enough to fool thousands of people before anyone even asks a question. And in that flood of noise, in that avalanche of fakes, fabrications, and attention-seeking nonsense, the real encounters, the ones that are worth studying, well, they get buried. So tonight, we're not chasing monsters. We're not diving into the folklore. We're not exploring the unknown. Tonight, we're doing something far less glamorous and far more important. We're going to try to clean up the mess. We're breaking down how hoaxes are made, why they spread, and how they fool good people into believing bad information. We're talking about the psychology behind them, the technology that fuels them, and the damage that they do to real research. Because if you want to find the truth, you have to clear away the lies first. And in this field, the lies are loud. This is episode 413, The Anatomy of a Hoax. And before we get into it, I'd like to remind you all guys to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And if you're not a member of the channel, please do so, because it really does help the channel grow. But before we jump into segment one, this does kind of tie in. I'm sure all of you guys have heard the news about Cam's channel. And when I got to looking, he's not the only channel it's happened to. There are several larger channels that this is happening with. And personally, I think it's because of the rise of these AI clickbait channels. YouTube makes a lot more money off of them because they own those channels. So I think that has a lot to do with what it is. They would rather produce a bunch of clickbait hoax stuff that makes money and gets clicks than let actual channels produce stories or share experiences. And that's just my personal opinion. I could be 100% wrong, but I kind of think that's the way things are going. But now we're going to jump into why hoaxes happen. Robbie, you want to take us away on that one?
So when people think about hoaxes, they usually picture something simple. guy in a costume, a prank gone too far, or somebody trying to stir up attention. But hoaxes don't start with costumes or with cameras. They start with people. They start with motives, and they start with insecurities. With the same impulses that drive rumors, gossip, and tall tales. And when you strip away all the creature, the story, the headlines, when you take all that off the table, you're left with a very basic question: why would somebody make this up? The answers aren't mysterious; they're human, very human. Some people want attention. Some people want validation. Others want to feel important. Some want to be part of a story that's bigger than themselves. And some just want to see how far a lie can travel before somebody calls them on it. And this is nothing new. This happens. Take, like we just said, take all that away. Stories like this happen for far more reasons than just cryptids. But there's also another layer to this, a bigger one. A hoax just doesn't happen because someone wants to fool others. A hoax happens because the environment is perfect for it. We live in a world where information moves faster than validation or verification, either one. Where people share before they think, headlines spread faster than facts, and in the cryptid world, where mystery is part of the appeal, a hoax can travel farther in one night than a real investigation can in a month. So before we talk about AI images, fake videos, clickbait, and all the modern tools hoaxers use, we have to start with the human side. Because if you understand why hoaxes happen, you can understand how they spread. And once you understand that, you can stop them before they take root. So some of the main questions on this is why people fabricate sightings. So why do you think that is, DA?
Sometimes they want attention. Sometimes it's because they're trying to make a name for themselves in this field. I'm not going to single out any quote unquote researchers with this, but I will point my finger at a couple of primetime shows. Mountain Monsters immediately comes to mind. That show is fake as a $3 bill. It's funny. It's fun to watch sometimes, but if you're looking for real research, that ain't the show.
Well, and that falls into that category. We've talked about it several times. It's entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
It's based.
It's all about ratings. It's not about actual research.
And you and I and Doc have all been out in the woods. And I would say the three of us are far more technically and tactically sound than any of them. And not talking bad about them, but you got really maybe two combat veterans in that bunch. Loosely, I know for a fact that at least one of them for sure was in the Marine Corps, but regardless, there's always something that they come up on. There's always something that they hear or they see and you and I and Doc have been out in the woods plenty of times, and there's been plenty of times that we've been out there and hadn't seen or heard anything.
Yeah. But a bad night in the woods is still a good night away from town.
Yeah. But the thing is we are in some prime area. So if we can go out in those areas and not have anything happen, how do they always catch something on camera? Whether it be a sound, trees moving, tree break, whatever. That's kind of always want to be one of your red flags. And some of these other mainstream shows, Finding Bigfoot was another one that comes to mind with me. They're always out there and they always pretty much, there's been some times that they haven't come across anything, but for the most part, yep. Exactly right, Jessica. And that's the thing. It's ratings driven. It's revenue stream. Because if they're not out there producing some kind of evidence or some kind of encounter, then nobody's going to watch. So that's the, so, that goes into the attention seeking behavior and even the social validation, because, when they get popular on TV, they get popular on their social media accounts and they become these bigger than life stars. And that's the thing. They, like you said, the Mountain Monsters, they go travel all the circuits talking to people like they're experts on the matter. I don't know if any of them have had any real encounters like we have. I'm not going to say that they have. I'm not going to say they haven't. But they do all the circuits and all this stuff, and people line up to meet them. But they're TV stars.
Exactly.
Plain and simple.
Lone Queen's got another great point. She says, I think sometimes hoaxes are carried out to cast doubt on the truth. These 5 stories are fake, so the other stories are probably fake too, help cover it. I 100% agree. I think some of these are deliberate hoaxes intended to muddy the waters.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure we're probably getting into that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's coming.
Into it. So, I mean, we can't hit every single reason in the first segment. So
some people just do it for clicks. Like if you go on what is that one? I never use it. TikTok. If you go on TikTok and you search Bigfoot, you're going to find 100 videos of some guy in a crappy costume scaring people or trying to walk like the Patterson Gimlin across the road, and they're like, "Oh, look, it's Bigfoot." Most of those are just so obvious hoaxes that they're just doing it for clicks. But there are a few channels out there on TikTok that actually have shown some really thought-provoking stuff. Unfortunately, the clickbait crap far outweighs the actual, what is it, pearls before swine or something like that?
Yeah,
you're going to find a lot of crap before you find a gem.
Or quantity before quality.
Right.
Because if you take the quality ones that are the ones you said that are actually investigative worthy and actually might be something, they're so few and far between amongst all the other crap out there. It's hard to weed them out sometimes.
DCat's got a good point. He says, I think once or two of the well, I'm not going to say the name of the show, were seriously looking, but they ran out of serious material a long time ago. I'm not going to say which convention. Had the opportunity to speak to some folks from that particular show, and I just kind of got the feeling that they didn't
impress us, is what he's
right. They just did not come across as legitimately wanting to know about what's in the field.
The way they acted towards those of us who got here and do this all the time too is like kind of like we were the rabble and they were the royalty.
Right.
They didn't want to be associated with those of us, people like me and DA and others that were there with us at that time.
Arlen, you got a point. I think a lot of them are created just to cast doubt on legitimate sightings.
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about. We've talked about that on the show. We've said that we believe some of these people with the most far out there theories.
Mike, you nailed it on the head right there. I used to watch. I'm not going to say the name of the show because this is not us just trying to point fingers and talk crap about other shows. So I'm going to I'm going to put that out there right now. But this particular show, after they involved a person I personally know in a project, he was willing to take them to a place that had a very credible encounter, and they chose to film where they could park their vehicles and walk into the park. They didn't go in the deep woods, no matter what they try to present it as on the show. Of course, they will try to film it and frame it so it looks like they're in the deep woods. They were never out of sight of the parking lot, from what I was told, and I haven't watched that show since.
So,
and some people just like to stir the pot.
Yeah. And a lot of times hoaxes will start out as jokes, but then they spiral out of control before, person may have just been wanting to mess with a friend or something like that. But before they know what's going on, it's, viral on the internet. Cause in the world we live in today, everybody's got one of these and, and even people who are not out there hoaxing are looking for their 15 minutes to catch something either real or catch somebody hoaxing. So, you've got that to contend with too.
I was talking to a group of people one time here in Missouri, And this was at a campground down by Silver Dollar City, and I just struck up a conversation, and this one guy starts telling me his Bigfoot story, and said he was a retired cop, and this is why you need to believe me. And he was, the more he talked, the more I knew he was just absolutely full of crap. I'm like, oh, you're a retired cop? He's like, yeah. So what department are you with? He goes, I was with the Greene County Sheriff's Department. I go, that's funny because that's where I retired, and I don't know you. And he walked away and went back to his tent.
Well, and then you get ones like sat down with me and you, and Kevin in the chat remembers this because he was with us, sat down with us in Ohio, and just started, every step of the story was a bigger step and a higher, by the time the story was over, we were all like, what? But you could just tell that he was trying to outdo the last line of the previous part of the story. It's okay. Now I gotta pile this on. Okay. Now I gotta pile this on. Okay. Now I gotta pile this on.
But the best hoaxes, the hardest ones to find, are the ones that start based off some type of truth. Like, they heard about, or they've actually looked at a lot of other sightings, and they include certain details, but you really got to watch, because sometimes these hoaxers really plan these things out. They'll give you a whole bunch of details, and then they'll start throwing in stuff like, and then he came up and he picked me up and carried me like a child, and then they start throwing in a lot of details that just don't make sense. And I'm not saying Bigfoot hasn't grabbed people or picked people up. I've talked to people that were like physically shaken because they'd been knocked down. But when they start throwing in things that just couldn't have possibly happened, like he took me back to his spaceship, and then we popped popcorn and watched Gettysburg together. Like, okay, But that's just an absurd example. But I have talked to people that has almost been that absurd. And another great way to watch for hoaxes is listen to them tell the story more than once. Because somebody that, like, if you have Robbie sit down and tell you the story about when he was a kid, those details don't change. I've known the guy for years. Those details have never changed. But I know a couple of people who do have names and reputations in this field. Again, I'm not pointing at any people. I'm not naming any names, but their stories have changed significantly over the years.
Yeah, and it's one thing that if you remember a different detail, or not a different detail, you remember an additional detail. Because things like that happen. That's the way your memory works. But if the first time you were sitting in your house like I was, and then you tell the story again 6 months later, and you were outside sitting in a chair against the wall, and then you tell the story again, and you were in your bedroom, things like that. I mean, that's what DA is talking about. He's not talking about, like, you remember it moving, and then later on you're telling wait a minute, I do remember that the eyes were deep sunk. Yeah, that stuff like that. That's how your memory works, as you're telling it. That's how your memory reconstructs it, especially if it's been suppressed because it was traumatic or for whatever reason. But so, but like he's talking about with the story changing, like dramatically changing, like,
well, it's like interviewing somebody that was a victim, that claims they were a victim of a crime, and the first time they tell you the story, it was one guy, and then the next time they tell you the story, it was three guys, and they were all armed. And those start sending up red flags because the details changed dramatically. If they said if it was one guy wearing a cowboy hat, and then later go, now that I think about it, it might have been a fedora. That's not like they changed a major detail. That's them saying, now that I've had a chance to think about more clearly, I think this detail would help you more. Or saying he had a black T-shirt when actually it was dark blue. Little details like that can, as memories as the shock wears off, and as the memory is adjusted, as you have rationally thought about it, you can remember little details like that. But you can't say the guy was 6'8" and weighed 310 pounds and threw me around like a rag doll, and the next time you tell the story, he was 5'2" and I kicked his ass.
Yeah. And that's so when we talk about details changing, that's what. So don't anybody out there think that, well, I remembered it this way, but then I remembered later that it was actually it's smaller details like that. That's 100% how your memory works. Because like Da said, once the shock kind of wears off, and talking about it and constantly telling your story, because that's what's happened to me. The first time I told Da my story and wrote it out, that's the first time I talked about it in almost 30 years. So, and then when I talked about it to him on the phone, I know he was sitting there with my email in his hand the first time we talked on video rather, and he was vetting me, so to speak, to make sure that I wasn't one of those that was just out there trying to, get my 15 minutes, so to speak. And that's
And
sad
for
to
every
see.
report every report we get that's credible, we'll get 5 or 6 that are just fantastical.
So now that we've kind of looked at the human side of the hoaxes, the motives, psychology, the reasons people create the stories, it's time to talk about the tools they use. And we all kind of know where those are going, especially now things are getting a lot better. Hoaxes today aren't made with plaster casts and gorilla suits. They're made with apps, editing software, and AI generators. And the technology has gotten good enough that a fake sighting can look convincing at first glance. So in segment 2, we're going to break down the rise of AI images, deep fakes, digital trickery, and how to spot the tails before they fool you. So Da, you want to take us through segment 2?
Sure, absolutely, and we've all seen those videos of the Bigfoot vlogger that are all clearly AI, where he's walking around talking and like even running into other people and stuff. Those are getting so much better that there's going to be a point where it's going to be impossible to tell that it's AI. But the technology has shaped the way stories spread, but in the last few years, it's really changed the game entirely. There was a time when a hoax took effort. You needed a costume, casting material, footprint molds, a shaky camcorder, or at least a buddy of yours willing to drink a six-pack and run across a field in the dark in a Bigfoot suit. Not anymore. Today, a hoax can be recreated in just a couple of minutes, not hours, not days, minutes. And the tools aren't in the hands of special effects artists or filmmakers. They're in everybody's hands. You can download it onto your phone. You can download an app within minutes and start making stuff like this. AI image generators, deep fake apps, photo filters, video editors built right into your smartphone. Tools that can create a creature that never existed in a place the hoaxer has never been, doing something that never happened. And the scary part is, the technology doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough to fool someone who's scrolling by fast. Good enough to get shared, and good enough to go viral before anyone really takes too close of a look at it. And most of these AI images fall apart the moment you slow it down and examine them. Hands with too many fingers on them, shadows that don't line up, bodies that don't match the environment, creatures that look like they were sculpted out of melted wax. Those are my favorite. But when people want to believe, or when they are caught up in the excitement, they don't look at the flaws. They look for the story. And that's how a fake sighting can travel across the country in a single evening. Not because it's convincing, but because it's shareable. So when we talk about hoaxes today, we're not talking about the old school stuff. We're talking about digital creations that can fool thousands of people before a single investigator even has a chance to look at it. And if you don't know what to look for, it's easy to get swept up in the excitement. And that's why this segment really matters. Because if you can learn to spot the digital footprints, the little tells that gives these fakes away, you can protect yourself from being misled. And if you can help keep the field clean for real encounters that deserve the attention. Robbie, how easy is it to make one of these hoax videos?
With the technology in that, just like you just mentioned, the stuff on your cell phones, very easy. You can scroll through YouTube right now, and you can find hundreds of thousands of fan-made movies. I watched one the other day just because it looked interesting. Wolverine versus Jason Voorhees. And it was a completely, totally AI-created video. The video, the voice, basically, I would assume somebody wrote the script or sent a prompt in and wrote it. And it was a complete 30-minute short movie of Jason Voorhees escaping from Arkham Asylum, going back to Crystal Lake, Wolverine taking, what was his daughter, X-23 or whatever her name was, taking her because she was learning to be a camp counselor at Camp Crystal Lake, Jason coming back and Wolverine and Jason fighting. And it was Hugh Jackman's face.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah, these deepfakes can get really good. Miss Lene, that's a great question. That video that we actually broke down on the channel some time ago. You remember the one, Robbie, where they were up in the trees? I don't think that was a fake video.
Nah, there was a lot of stuff in that video that was. Here's the thing with AI: if you start watching these videos, especially like using that one that I was just talking about as an example, when Wolverine and Jason would fight, you can tell it's not two actors moving. It just,
yeah,
it's hard to explain.
Real stiff swings.
Yeah, the movement in that video that Miss Lene is talking about, that was natural, fluid. Everything was matching up. There's no, right now AI cannot create a branch swinging and swaying from the weight of a creature and make it look that natural. And I'm not saying that, in a couple of months, and I say months, and I'm not joking about that, because look how much it's evolved just from 6 months ago to now. With a big
Dorothy, you're absolutely right. Since we're on X Network, I've really got to watch my language, but you all know what I call most of those red circle pictures. BS photography, when you kind of put them together. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I've quit groups because someone will post a picture with 2 or 3 red circles on it, and if you say I don't see anything, you just basically get screamed at. I'm like, this isn't research, this is delusion, and I won't be a part of it. But yeah, unfortunately there is a lot of that.
So, but and this goes into what we were talking about. Some of the, and when DA said digital footprints, he was not talking about actual digital footprints. He's talking about the tells like that on when you watch the characters move and go to interact with each other. It's not fluid. Now, and if it's just one character and it's just interacting with its environment, it's a lot easier for it to process and do. When you start adding a lot more stuff to it, it gets a lot muddier. And it gets harder for the software. And a lot of that depends on, if you're just using, your cell phone, the processor in your cell phone's probably not fast enough or strong enough to make something like that. But if you get somebody who's got, a really high-end computer, who knows?
Oh yeah, I mean, look what ILM was, Industrial Light and Magic. What they were able to do with the Star Wars films in the 70s and 80s. Look at the movie, the Last Starfighter. All of the combat sequences in the Gunstar, that was all CGI, and they had to rent time on a Cray supercomputer owned by the CIA to process that. It took thousands of hours to process all that CGI. Then today, you can do it in a smartphone.
Yep. But segueing into that, doing it on a smartphone, you do end up with AI artifacts, which are things like DA talked about earlier: extra fingers, warped limbs,
shadows in the wrong place.
Shadow, an arm over here, but the shadow for that arm, 2 feet away. So those are things that you have to look for that kind of are the little tells. It's just like playing poker. You're watching somebody who gets a good hand, they always do something like that. Or it's the same. You're looking for things that don't belong.
Right. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you for gifting the subs, and congratulations to everybody that won. But Robbie's absolutely right. Some of these fakes are good that they look right, but when I've seen a dozen of them in the last week alone that you can see that somebody shoves somebody in a grocery line, and they get up and they kick their crap out of them. You can watch the video, and when you see they're swinging like this, there's really no fluidity of movement. They don't move the way a fighter would move, and you don't even really ever see them connect. You just see suddenly somebody's beat up, and you can really watch these and catch it. And some of those AIs have built-in limiters, so they won't show like graphic violence or things like that, depending on which one they use. There's other things you can watch for. And what was the name of that one that we were seeing in a lot of videos that see the name in it?
Oh,
I can't think of the name of it.
I think it starts with a V.
I think it does too. Was it Vimeo or something like that?
Something like that. But it's a watermark, basically, is what it is.
And that's the name of the AI program that did it.
Yeah, and a lot of them you can do that. You know, some people are getting kind of clever with it, and they'll crop it out. But when they start cropping it out, it's obvious that the video is cropped. You know, where they move the bottom border up above that, so it covers up stuff like that. But that there again, that in itself is kind of a tell, because if somebody's recording this off their phone, I mean, it's not gonna,
and another big trick they'll do, and this one you've got to kind of watch for. And I've seen Thinker Thunker point this out before, and MK Davis has even mentioned it a couple of times. Is when they'll take an AI video that it's at high res, and they'll re-upload it at low resolution, so you can't zoom in and get any details. That means when you zoom in on the hands, they get real pixelated, they get real grainy. They do that deliberately because they want people to think it's a legit video. But if somebody claims they filmed that with their cell phone videos don't record at that low frame rate. They just don't. Not anymore.
Yeah, most cell phones are at least 1080 now, I think.
Something like that, yeah. If not 4K entirely.
Yeah.
I know the new iPhone films in 4K. Angela Monroe, Sora uses water. Sora, that's it. Yep. Sora always has a watermark.
Sora, Sora. Yep.
Lone Queen says, my experience has been when you have time and sit down to try to catch activity, nothing happens, possibly because the creatures are attuned to our routines and their environment. I think it's when you're trying to catch anything like that on film, I think it's because the motion of bringing up a camera, like bringing that up, is a lot like the bringing up of a weapon. I think they don't know what it is and construe it as dangerous. So, another thing about these is when they upload these hoax videos, and I'm not telling anybody to stop. This is not to try to dissuade anybody from this. But anytime one of these hoax videos shows up, me and Robbie get a dozen different people send it to us. Same video, we'll get the same one. Have you seen this? Yes, I've had a chance to look at this, but somebody will always send us one of those videos, so we see those fairly quickly. And we don't talk about a lot of them on the air because Robbie and I will start texting each other, and we'll get Doc in the group text, and we're like, what do you make of this one? And one of us will be like, all right, this looks fake, this looks fake, this looks fake. And then we'll kind of break it down amongst ourselves. But I don't want to do that on the show. I don't want to break down a video and basically debunk it on the air because I don't want to get a copyright strike, because somebody like that on the video will copyright strike you for using your video even if it falls under fair use. And the way YouTube is anymore, we just can't take the risk. They're shutting channels down for nothing, so why give them ammo?
Yeah. And that's not to say that every video that gets sent to us is that way, but there are some that people send us, they're like, hey, this looks kind of sketchy to me. What do you guys think? And they're sending it just because they think it's fake. So
yeah, we do get a lot of them like, hey, I think this video is fake. What do you guys think? And I'll generally, I'll answer someone, yeah, that looks pretty fake to me, or stuff like that. But you've just got to be careful with these videos because, like Robbie was saying, that AI is getting better every month. It's getting better, and it's going to get to the point where it's going to be impossible to tell. So we're very skeptical about any video evidence unless we know the provenance behind it. If I know Robbie, Doc, or I, or Steve recorded it, or somebody I know personally, like say my old Lieutenant Jenkins, let's say he recorded it, okay, I'm gonna believe it. But if it just appears in my email, yeah, without anybody saying where it was from or anything like that, I've got pictures right now on my hard drive that were sent to me not 6 months ago by somebody that claimed they took these pictures on Table Rock Lake. And at first I got real excited, but then I ran those through a reverse image search and found that over the last 6 years, those exact same photos have popped up on about a dozen different websites claiming that they were on different parts of the country, different lakes, different stories, all claiming that they were the ones that took the pictures, when in fact none of them actually took those pictures, but they just keep circulating with the same stories, with different stories.
You remember William had that happen to him. Somebody sent him pictures and said, "Hey, look at these pictures I took," and they were actually William's pictures that he took on his property. And he was like, "You took them, huh?" "Yeah. What do you think of them?" "I think they're my pictures that you got off one of my." So people will do stuff like that. So you got to be careful with stuff like that too.
So just anytime you see something like that, if you've got a computer with a larger monitor, put it on there. Don't just trust it on your phone. Get it on a bigger monitor. Put it on your TV if you've got a bigger TV. Most phones have the ability to cast to a smart TV. Take a look at it at a larger rate. And on YouTube, if it's a YouTube video, slow it down. Run that video at 25% speed. You will catch so much more just doing that.
Remember the video we had with the trail cam and whatever it was up over the tent? You sent it to us first, and I watched it on my phone. I'm like, I don't see anything, dude. And we watched on the show that night, and me and Doc both, and I hadn't seen it on a bigger screen. And as soon as it popped up on the big screen, I was like, and me and Doc both reacted simultaneously, exact same. But I didn't see that on my phone because I was looking at it like that versus looking at it on a bigger screen. So
yeah, you can explain a lot just by watching it on a bigger screen. And a lot of times, especially when they're trying to use these AI deep fake videos, they're designed for people to watch them on their phone screen. They don't fare as well when they're in much larger scale. I'm trying to think of in particular videos. I don't know that I want to call any particular video out, but we've watched a lot of videos where it looked great. There was one somebody sent me. There was this crystal clear image of a dog man, like snarling and raising its lip at the camera, and then it kind of backs up and turns away. I put that on my TV, and I was like, oh God, yeah, that's not real. But on my phone, I was like, gee, many Christmas, look at this. But as soon as I got it up on the big TV, I was like, yeah, there's artifacts plenty in this.
But just like you said, they were designed to be looked at on the smaller screens. That's why they look a lot better.
But the thing about it is just how fast these AI hoaxes will spread. Like especially TikTok videos. You watch that on your phone. It's just very easy to hit share and send that to people that are interested in those kind of videos. And next thing you know, that video's got 5 million hits. And not because it was good, not because it was real, but because it was easy to share. And I'm as guilty of it as the next person. I'm guilty of like looking at a video, especially if I think it's funny. I'll just send it on to Robbie and Doc because I know they'll get a chuckle out of it. But the same thing works with Bigfoot videos. You just share it, send it to people you think might like it, and think about it later if you think about it at all. But there's a huge difference between genuine trail cam photos and AI composite photos, and a lot of times it's the watermark or even the way they respond to the camera. But when you what's that?
I was just saying we're guilty of it with that Griffin video.
Oh yeah,
it was said it was supposedly a Griffin in Germany. I think I sent that to you and Doc, and
I was like, "Holy moly!" because I watched it on my phone.
Yeah, and then you said, "Watch that on a big screen," and it immediately starts falling apart. But on your phone, you're like, because you don't see artifacts, and the movement looks really fluid. But you put it on the big screen and you start seeing feathers that are out of place, and the shadow on the ground doesn't line up like it's supposed to, and when it turns around and the tail whips, it's like you see the shadow move and then the tail moves. It's just all kinds of stuff starts that you can't really see on that small screen.
Hillary says, my goofy husband watches anything. I hear him screaming like a little girl, and he comes running to me. Look at this. I've been guilty of that a time or two myself. Mike says, robbing the AI. I have some photos from the Oklahoma attack. If you guys would like to see those, can show them publicly. Yeah, I wouldn't mind taking a look at them.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get you on the show and talk about them at some point. Let me just check another comments. Yeah, I'd definitely like to take a look at them, Mike.
Yeah, me too. For sure.
We got just a couple minutes till. Well, we got actually, was it 9 minutes before? Yeah, we can get through the next segment. So, when we talked about technology, the AI tools, the deep fakes, the digital trickery, we need to look at the fuel that keeps these hoaxes alive. Because even the most convincing fake doesn't go anywhere unless it has a vehicle to carry it. And in today's world, that vehicle is the headline. So in segment 3, we're breaking down how misleading titles, sensational phrasing, and clickbait headlines turn small stories into big ones, and how they shape people or what people believe before they even read a single word. Robbie, you want to take that next segment real quick?
Yep. So once a hoax is created, whether it's from AI images, shaky video, a story someone's typed up in 5 minutes, it still needs something to carry it, something to push it out in the world. And in today's world, nothing spreads faster than a headline. Headlines are designed to grab attention, not to tell the truth. They're written to make you click, not to make you think. And in the cryptid world, that can be a dangerous combination. You'll see headlines that say, Bigfoot seen behind rural home. And then you read the actual article, and it turns out to be a bear standing up to sniff at the air. You'll see Dogman terrorizes small town, and the story ends up being a stray German shepherd with mange. You'll see creature attacks livestock, and the photo showed nothing more than a coyote doing what coyotes do. But most people never get that far. They read the headline, they share the headline becomes a story, even when the story doesn't support what the headline is saying. And that's how misinformation spreads. Not because people are gullible, but because people are busy. People are scrolling fast. People want the excitement without the homework. And the folks writing these headlines know that. They know that fear sells. They know that mystery sells. And they know the word creature gets more clicks than the word coyote. They know monster gets more attention than misidentification. So the headlines become the hook. The hook becomes the rumor. And the rumor becomes the evidence that people repeat for years afterward, even if the original story was debunked the same day it came out. That's why we always tell people, don't trust the headlines, don't trust the caption, don't trust the shared text. Go to the source, read the details, and look for the facts. Because in the world of cryptids, the headline is often the first of the hoax, even when the story underneath isn't one that it's trying to be.
And you guys got to remember, the headline, that's its job. The headline's job is to grab you and pull you in. And a lot of cases, the headline has very little to do with the actual article. It's just meant to get your attention long enough to make you read more. And that's how clickbait distorts otherwise normal wildlife encounters.
To use that in the proper terminology for what it's supposed to be used for, take our back cover blurbs. They have to grab the attention, because when people that, not those of you out there in the chat who read our books, but somebody who is coming across our books for, just scrolling through Amazon, those back cover blurbs have to grab somebody's attention, make them want, oh, this is an interesting book. But you can't do that, because if you do it the way we're talking about here, and you have this attention grabbing thing, and then all of a sudden the book's nowhere near what that is, then you're gonna have a whole lot of unhappy readers. You're gonna have a whole lot of returns and things like that. So the back cover blurb is the way a headline is supposed to be used, but obviously we've showed you the way that they're used, that they're not supposed to be used.
Jeff, you're absolutely right. I can tell you that video has not been altered in any way other than them trying to bring the image out, because we didn't even know it was there. And I can take you back to that spot, and I can point you at 5 other people who've had encounters in that same spot. And I stand by that video, because I know, but no, I know it's legit because I was there. I was the subject that was there when we took it. Steve was filming it. It was just me and Steve. Our wives were in my van at the time, and yeah, there was no well, I don't even think anybody knew what an AI app was back then. It was we took that, and I think it was 2017, 2018, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think it was 18. But that's the thing. Without you in the car, I could take getting into Joe Bald. I could take somebody to where that happened.
Yeah, that spot's still there. And we've had plenty of weird things happen since then in Joe Bald. Yep. And I don't think I've taken a single person down there that hasn't come back saying, you know, that is one of the weirdest places I've ever been. One of the things Robbie and I have talked about more than once on this show is called NLP, or Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Headlines and clickbait titles, they use NLP to make those as attractive as possible to draw people in. It's the same tricks that people use in advertisement. NLP has been used for a long time, but very few people actually know what it is. And if you ever want a eye-opening experience, just Google Neuro-Linguistic Programming, or NLP, and read what it has to say about it. It is truly the art of using language to trick someone's brain into doing what you want them to do.
Or learning how to be a human lie detector.
Exactly, which is the application we learned. Neuro-linguistic programming is extremely powerful, and anybody that doesn't understand how powerful it is clearly has not had a chance to learn about it. It's it's one of those things. It's kind of like having a Bigfoot experience. Once you've opened your eyes, you can't close your eyes to it anymore. You notice it, and you can't help but notice it. Right, Hillary, that's exactly what it is. It's subliminal advertising. It's using little things to inspire images in your head. Just certain phrases. People's brains are hardwired to react certain ways to certain words and phrases. And NLP is just learning how to not only understand that, but to use it to your advantage. Lone Queen says the Joe Bald video is really quite scary when you really see the full scope of things. The full scope has never been sorted out. Yeah, every time we go down there, we find something just as bizarre. And we've been chased out of there a couple of times.
Yep.
It's not a place I recommend going at night by yourself.
Matter of fact, last time we were all down there together, we got chased out of there.
Sure did. We are coming up at the mark of the hour, so we're going to take a quick pause to pay the bills, as Race would say. So we're going to take a brief moment, hear a word from our sponsors, and you guys can top off your coffee, grab a couple of cookies, walk the dog, whatever y'all need to do, and we will be back in just a few minutes. So we appreciate you guys, and we will be right back.
The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie. The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unxmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unxmedia.com or amazon.com. 2026 is off to a great start, and it's almost time. With many exciting predictions and the recent emphasis on a potential major planetary event occurring in April, it promises to be a super transformational month. And we couldn't be more excited to be in Hawaii during this shift to integrate new frequencies. Folks, this will be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. April the 20th through the 24th, 2026, join us in Kona, Hawaii for Journey to Truth's very first vacation conference retreat. Enjoy 9 presenters over 5 days with ocean adventures with dolphins and whales and sacred sites and so much more. Experience Hawaii like never before. You will enjoy 5 days on the Big Island, so don't wait. Start planning your trip today at journeytotruth.online. That's journeytotruth.online. The paranormal field is changing, and now, more than ever, it's time for professionals to lead the way. Join the Oz Professional Paranormal Investigators Association, a global network of serious investigators dedicated to raising the standard of real paranormal research. Access professional certifications, advanced training, and courses exploring true investigation, psychic phenomena. If you're a real paranormal investigator, be a part of the group defining the future. Join today. Visit ozinstitute.org. That's ozinstitute.org.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Dot Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
In a world where monsters still walk the earth, one author dares to face them. From the brutal cryptid horror of the Apex Predator series to the Ozark legends that stalk the night in Lakeview Man, from the elite warriors of codename Wild Hunt to the relentless investigations of the Nightmare Hunter and the frontier terror of Dark Frontiers. When the Dead Rise, the Ragnarok Rising saga unleashes pure zombie apocalypse fury. And across the stars, war rages in the Lost Legion and Man's Marauders. And in the realm of myth and steel, the world of Vanguard calls to those born for legend. Cryptids, zombies, sci-fi warfare, epic fantasy. This is the universe of D.A. Roberts.
And we are back, folks. Thank you guys for sticking with us. And we're going to jump right back into this. So, what are some examples of misleading cryptid headlines you've seen, Robbie?
Well, I think we kind of named a lot of them. You know, you see a big headline that says creature. That's, you know, because you can search creature and get 5,000, articles that'll pop up. I think I don't know if it's one of the most popular, or I hate to use the word popular, but the one with the was it a mop or whatever it was that you remember it showed the
Yeah,
but it said Bigfoot looks over a deck railing, or a creature looks over the deck railing, and once you start breaking it down, it turned out to be a gorilla mask with a mop over the top of, or something like that. I mean,
yeah.
But that was another one that was, before people even really started looking at it, it was completely viral and had millions and millions of views because it was set up to look grainy. And that was really before AI started really catching on.
Mm-hmm.
But using that same terminology, using those keywords and those things that are going to grab the attention. Like I said, that's one of those, because we even talked about it here on the show. We broke it down and like, look, you can see this here and this here. So I think that's one of the ones that I always think about when start talking about a hoax because it was so popular so quick before anybody really even looked at it.
Well, there's a couple others that I bring up in the next couple of segments. I don't want to pop those out too terribly soon because once once we start talking about those, everybody's going to go, "Oh, I remember those." So I don't want to reveal those too soon. But yeah, it falls back to some of these media shows. It's all about ratings. And the more you realize that that's what they're there for, you've got to take anything they present with a grain of salt because it's not intended to be real research. It's intended to garner them ratings.
Mm-hmm. And that's no different than, Greg just mentioned it. That's all this other, and I'm not even going to call the name of it because I don't want to give it any kind of credit, but the one trying to debunk the Patterson-Gimlin footage. I mean
that's why I've never done a show about that.
Yeah,
because I don't want to give them any more traction because that's all it was. It was all AI clickbait crap.
Yeah, and
the guy that Bob Hieronymus that came forward claimed he was in the suit has never been able to reproduce the suit. Could not produce duplicate the way it walked. Basically, everything that entire thing was built on was predicated on a lie.
And you and I have said this. We don't agree with this individual. But I sent you the video. We don't agree with him that much, but he was spot on in his why this is the way it is and the things that were done, and specifically not coming out till after Dr. Meldrum passed on, where he couldn't
defend it, but his brother did. His brother's like, he never said that. You're taking that quote out of context.
But I believe that other individual is 100% accurate in his estimation of, when you're going to recreate these videos in a true documentary sense, when you're wanting to show that visual to people, you're going to have stuff like that. And that's where that comment came from. It wasn't, it wasn't how this, and I don't know.
It was misconstrued completely.
Yeah, exactly. And, but that's kind of the same thing that we're talking about. They're using the same terminology, same keywords, but they're doing it for ratings. And
they got them. They created enough controversy. They've probably made a good bit of money off that video.
I would be probably scared to hear the number that they made off it.
You'd probably be angry to hear the number.
I'm sure. Because most everybody in our circle of people are like, you know what? I don't really care what that video says. It's not going to change my mind.
Same here.
We've watched that video so many times. We sat there and watched it with Jesus and broke it down. And, we broke it down with William. We broke it down with
NK Davis. Nobody studied that video more than NK.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Greg and Spencer and Misty. All the people that we are, Jessica, all the people we are like-minded with on all that stuff. All of us are of the same opinion that video is 100% real. So I don't care what these guys say.
We mean the Patterson-Gimlin film, not the debunking video.
Yeah, the PG film, the original. And I always say this, so I hate to sound like a broken record, but if the guy who made one of the top-selling movies of that time, the special effects director of Planet of the Apes, said, if we could have made a suit in that time frame that looked like that, that's what you would have seen on that movie versus a chimpanzee mask is basically what they boiled it to.
That barely moved its mouth, let alone showed any range of emotion. I agree, Greg. Thinker did a good job on it. But I don't want to give that debunking video any more airtime than it's already gotten. To me, it's not worth watching. And if someone were to ask me privately why I have my reasons, I'd be happy to tell you, but I'm not going to say it on the air. But there are some reasons why I have very little trust for some of the people behind it.
100%. And but I saw Greg mention that in the chat. Now I think it's worth mentioning that, we ain't done a show on it, but everybody knows where we stand on it. So I think
Exactly.
it's worth mentioning in the vein of what we're talking about of hoaxing and trying to debunk something that's actually real and say it's a hoax by using the same process that you use to hoax something.
Right. And to me, that's what that is. It's basically a hoax of a hoax.
Yeah.
They're trying to they're making a hoax video by trying to claim that was a hoax.
Yep.
And trying to make money off of it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That Blue Biddy said she's met Dr. Meldrum in person, as have I. He's been.
We had him on the show,
and for him to go on national TV as many times as he did, and put his reputation and his credentials on the line, saying he believed that this was a real creature, I don't think he was balking just because he took a lot of flack for that, especially in the beginning.
Well, even Dr. Jane Goodall said that she believed that there was a high likelihood a North American ape exists.
Just look at those three people: Dr. Jane Goodall, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, and Dr. Grover Krantz. That's three of the smartest people that I can think of, and all three of them, the line that Grover Krantz said one time, and I can't remember what documentary it was in. He said, somebody asked him, well, what would it take for somebody to actually hoax this? And he said, well, it would take somebody out there smarter than me, and I just don't think there is that person. I'm like,
it's an extremely confident thing to say. I remember him saying that, but the guy was right. It would take somebody on the level of a Meldrum or somebody like that to be able to pull off this kind of level of a hoax globally.
But he was talking about within his field of primatology and primate locomotion and stuff like that. And he was talking specifically about the video, and he was like, he said, there's no way that was a person in a suit. He said, anatomically, there is no way that was a person in a suit. And that's what the question comes. Well, what would it take to hoax that? Of course, this was way before, AI and all the stuff we've got now. So that's what he was shooting his shot. He's like, if there's somebody out there smarter than me, that's what it would have taken to fake that.
Right.
And you got to respect the man for saying that, because that's okay. Prove me wrong.
Jeff, you may be onto something. The whole thing was designed to create controversy to get people to watch that video. That's all it was. And a lot of people did.
But like we said, the exact same thing that these hoaxers are using is designed for ratings, to get people to watch, click, share, same thing. They got all those channels out there talking about it, and they got all these people, in an uproar.
They got tons of free publicity because of the controversy.
Yeah.
Robbie, you want to lead us into the next one?
Sure. So now that we've talked about headlines, the fuel that pushes hoaxes into the spotlight, we need to talk about the people who create them, not the accidental misidentifications of folks who generally saw something strange, but maybe just didn't really know what they were looking at, but the ones who deliberately manufacture stories for attention, fame, or profit. In segment 4, we're breaking down hoaxes themselves, the motives, the patterns, and the damage they do to real research. DA, take us into segment 4.
Absolutely. And hoaxers want to be famous. There's a big difference between someone who misidentifies something in the woods and someone who deliberately manufactures a story. Misidentification is human. We've all done it. It happens to hunters, hikers, cops, park rangers, everybody. But hoaxing, that's intentional. It's calculated. And that's a lot more common than people want to admit. Some hoaxers are easy to spot. They're loud, they're dramatic, they want the spotlight, they want to be the person who finally proved it. They want the interviews, the attention, the social media followers, all of it. They want to be the center of a mystery that didn't exist until they created it. Others are quieter. They don't want fame. They want control. They want to manipulate a narrative. They want to stir up excitement in their community. They want to be the one who knows something everybody else doesn't. And they enjoy watching people chase a story that they invented. And then there are the ones who start small. Just a joke between friends, a prank on a coworker, or a tall tale told around a campfire. Something that wasn't meant to go anywhere until it did. And once it spreads, once people start believing it, they feel trapped. They either admit it and face the embarrassment, or they double down and keep the lie alive. And that's where the real damage happens. Because hoaxers don't just fool strangers online. They waste investigators' time. They pollute databases. They make real witnesses afraid to come forward. They turn legitimate research into a freaking circus. And every time the hoax goes viral, it pushes real evidence, the real encounters, further into the background. Hoaxers aren't just creating fake monsters, they're creating noise. And when in a field where the truth is already hard to find, noise is the enemy. Understanding why hoaxers do what they do and how they operate is a critical part of separating fact from fiction. Because once you recognize the patterns and you start to see the same behaviors over and over again, in that moment, you start to see those patterns, the hoax fall apart. So, why some people fabricate sightings for attention or validation is it's just basic human psychology. Some people want the attention, and some people just like making up crap and seeing who can get to believe it.
Yeah. And, we've hit on this several times tonight. Some people do it for the attention. Some people do it for the validation. Some people do it for monetary purposes. Because if you've got to monetize TikTok or YouTube or anything like that, and you get a lot of clicks and a lot of views and a lot of shares, you're going to make some money off of it. And that's easy way to, especially if you're halfway decent with a computer and some stuff like that, you can make a quick buck off stuff like that. And
sure can.
It's an easy way for people to get that quick fix. And, hey, I want to. There's something I want to go buy. Oh, I know. I'll make some videos. And it's not just cryptid stuff. They do it for all kinds of stuff.
There's tons of reasons why people do stupid videos to get clicks. I mean, it's the same reason why all these and I absolutely detest the someone calling themselves an influencer. If somebody has an influencer in their title, I disregard literally everything they say. But people that claim to be influencers on TikTok or influencers on Facebook, they're going to say crap just to get people to watch. And that's basically what it boils down to.
Yeah. Well, people, and there's plenty of things that I get on Sean Strickland about, the MMA fighter, but people gave him a hard time when he, got on that influencer who kept saying, I'll fight you. I want to go a couple rounds with you. I can hold my own with you. And people are like, well, Strickland shouldn't have gone as hard on him as he did. But, this guy for months was talking about how he could take Strickland bell to bell and all this, or he could stay in there with him. And I mean, Strickland got tired of it. He's a professional fighter. The guy wanted to get in the ring with him. He showed him why he didn't belong in the ring with him.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't ever try to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it ain't like Strickland went out and grabbed a guy and brought him in, and said, hey, won't you come in here and do this? I mean, the guy literally went after Strickland, and Strickland showed him why. Now, there's plenty of stuff, like I said, that I disagree with that Sean Strickland does, but that wasn't one of them. I mean, it's, and anybody that knows Bradley Martin, all the stuff that he did with the fake weights and all that stuff, and got, was always getting called out. Brian Shaw said, hey, if you want to prove these people wrong, come on into my gym. And, nobody says anything about my weights. You come in here and you can show them on my stuff. And he never would do it. Why? Because he knew that he was getting clicks and he knew he was using fake weights, and he got called out on it.
Yeah.
And that's usually what happens when you call these hoaxers and these fake people out, that, they don't step up to the plate when they have the chance.
Speaking of getting called out, Robbie, let's jump in a time machine, shall we? Let's go back to 2008. Okay. You guys may or may not remember the names of two fellows by the name of Rick Dyer and Matthew Whitten. These two rocket scientists claimed they had a 7 foot tall, 7 foot tall, 500-pound frozen Bigfoot in a deep freeze in Georgia.
Yep.
They were charging thousands of dollars for people to come take a look at it. And when somebody that knew something about biology finally got a look at it, it fell apart. These guys were trying to get rich, claiming they had a frozen Bigfoot. And that is and they actually pulled the wool over a lot of people's eyes. I mean, this went on for months, that these guys were charging people large amounts of money to come see this frozen Bigfoot. And it just turned out to be a rubber ape costume stuffed full of meat.
Mike said he's sending us those pictures.
Okay. I'll have to look at them after the show. Yeah, Milkman says, Dyer, there's a name I haven't heard in a while. Yeah, they fooled a lot of people. I mean, even when they first came out, I thought, oh, great, somebody's finally got a body. They didn't have a body, and they knew it. But they stuck to that lie until they couldn't anymore.
Yeah. Well, this is like opposite ends of the spectrum, and it's a good way to show that. You got those guys who went all in, like Hillary said, went on CNN, and they rode it till the biscuit wheels fell off the gravy train. But then you got remember the guy I sent you the Peter or something or other dog trainer that had all the he had it all on his YouTube channel, and he was trying to pass it off. But in all honesty, I believe the guy really knew what he was doing. I don't think he really thought he was doing this. I think he was just doing it for entertainment purposes. But there you go. That's opposite ends of the spectrum. Somebody who's, knows what he's doing is absolutely just off the rails, goofy. Because anybody that's watched any of those videos and especially one of the Dog Man, when you can tell it's a big robotic thing from like Home Depot.
Oh, you're like smashes through the window and I love those.
Or these guys who like were like everything that they put every single thing into trying to make people believe that they were. But it's the same thing. It's just two different.
Well, there's another video that claimed he had all these videos, that had all these recordings of Bigfoot talking to him, and I listened to like one of them, and I was like, he's just talking while he breathes in. It's like, hello, how are you? That's what he was doing.
Yep.
And I listened to that. I'm like, who's buying this crap? Who's believing this crap? But that's what he was doing. He would talk to himself using that inhale voice versus an exhale voice, and he would just talk in broken sentences. And I'm like, and he would never show the face of the creature. It was like on the other side of a dark screen, and it would talk to him. I was like, oh, come on.
Well, he also did an alien autopsy, and he had one of those 3M paint suits was his. He was wearing one of them 3M paint suits. Is his
Timex suits?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that one. You sent me that one.
Yep. But I think he was legitimately just trying to entertain people. I don't think there's no way that he could have thought that any of that stuff or that anybody was taking him seriously. Because when I sent it to him, I was like, this guy's hilarious. I mean, because the videos are fun. I mean, honestly, I think this guy wanted to be a director or something like that, and I think he was really trying to get himself out there. Look what I can do with a shoestring budget, and I use shoestring very loosely because if anybody's watched these videos, you know, shoestring is more like a dental floss budget instead of a shoestring budget.
Yeah. We don't have enough money for a shoestring. It's just dental floss.
Yeah. But
I wonder where I heard that before.
Yeah. But then you get these guys who are legitimately trying to fool people and trying to make money off people. He wasn't trying to make money off people. Well, I mean, maybe off clicks, but that's not as bad as these people going in charging thousands and thousands of dollars and taking.
Well, they made thousands, maybe even more than $100,000.
Oh yeah,
off that carcass. And before, I don't know if they got sued or went to jail or what, but they sure dropped out of the headlines in a hurry.
Yeah. So, yeah, but like I said, that's just two examples that are on.
Me too, Harold. Robbie, did you lock up?
No, you did.
One of us did. You froze up on my screen.
Well, you were froze up like this on my screen.
Yeah. And now that I'm looking at the broadcast, I'm still froze up. Oh, there it went.
Oh, yeah, you're moving on my screen now. You might need
Gotta
to
love
refresh your browser again.
I might. But in that case, with those two idiots with the body in the freezer, they doubled down instead of just going, "Yeah, you caught us." And it was so much worse for them when when the truth came out, because they were absolutely humiliated. But they did make a ton of money.
Yeah.
And some people just do it for the psychological reward of fooling people. And that's crazy, but there are a couple of channels out there, and Mike, you probably know one of them I'm talking about. They do absolutely zero research. They pull their stories from Reddit, and that's it. They don't do any research. They don't do any. They don't go out in the field at all. You just can't pull stories from Reddit and expect people to give you credibility, because Reddit is Reddit. It's just people posting all kinds of made up stuff, and yeah, sure, people share actual events on there, but you can't trust it as a source. I certainly wouldn't pull anything from Reddit for the show.
Yeah, you might want to refresh your browser again. People said you keep freezing up.
All right, well, I may disappear for a second. I'll be right back.
Hopefully he'll come back, but he was having problems with the.
Hope it didn't kick us off the air. I didn't think about that.
It still showed me on there.
Okay, good. Awesome.
You're a little bit better now.
It's probably my internet. We still got storms in the area.
Yep, I was on the big screen, Jeff, but I wasn't. Love you, Milkman.
And another big problem with hoaxes is just how much damage they do to actual research.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say. That's what they don't think about, but they don't care about that, because anybody that's going to go to that trouble to fake something like that, they don't care about the topic and the subject like we do anyway. So it's not that they don't think about it, or they don't care about it. They don't care that they're muddying the waters or making everything else look bad or anything, because all they're looking for is the dollar sign.
Exactly. But, now that we've talked about the hoaxers themselves, the motives, the patterns, the behavior, it's time to shift into something a little bit more practical, because once you understand why hoaxes happen and who creates them, the next step is learning how to spot them before they spread. So the next segment, we're going to break down the red flags, the inconsistencies, and the telltale signs that let you identify a hoax practically instantly, even when it's wrapped in a convincing story. Robbie, you want to take us in?
We in segment 5, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. My phone went dark on me. I'll just make sure I was at the right spot. Okay. So one of the most important skills in this field, whether you're a researcher, a hunter, a hiker, or just someone who enjoys these stories, is learning how to recognize a hoax before it gets its hooks into you. Because once a hoax starts spreading, and once people start repeating it, it gets a little harder to figure out the ins and outs of it, because once people start spreading it and saying it gets repeated multiple times, it gets a lot harder to pull the truths or the negatives out of it, and it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle. But the truth is, most hoaxes have tails. They have seams, they have cracks, they have little inconsistencies that stand out on the moment you slow down and look at them with a critical eye. The first red flag is the story itself. If the details are overly dramatic, which we've talked about, overly cinematic, which we've also talked about, or sound like they're straight out of a movie script, that's a problem.
My personal favorite is when you watch someone tell a story more than once, and they have it set up in their head to cry at the exact same time in the story.
Yep.
That's a big one.
Yeah, and that happens more. There are people. I mean, watch movies. There are people who can cry on cue.
Yeah.
So, real encounters, the ones that come from honest witnesses, tend to be messy. They're uncertain. They're emotional. They're full of hesitation and doubt. Look at Fred. Perfect example.
Yep.
Hoaxes, on the other hand, are usually just a little too clean, too polished, and too perfect. And speaking for somebody who's had an encounter, and DA can back this up, Fred would back this up, Doc would back this up. Things are never perfect and polished, and it never happens. Da 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 da. It's always like, oh, here. It's just, those are things that you can look for that are gonna start breaking a story apart. Another red flag is evidence or lack of it. If someone claims a creature walked right past them, but they don't have no tracks or photos or audio, no physical sign of any kind, that's a warning sign. It's not necessarily 100%. Well, it's out of there, but it can be a warning sign. Not because every real hunt or real encounter comes with evidence, because they don't. Case in point, there was no footprints outside from my encounter, but it's because hoaxers often rely just on the story itself, not on any kind of supporting evidence. They want the reaction, but not the investigation. They want to hear you go, oh, but they don't want anybody looking any further than that. Then there's the inconsistencies, details that change from one retelling to another, timelines that don't add up, distances that don't make sense, descriptions that shift depending on who's asking the questions. In law enforcement, we see this all the time in false reports. People come and, hey, I want to report my phone being stolen. Okay, where were you at? Well, I think I was at McDonald's. Well, what'd you do with it? Well, I laid it down on the table. I got up and left. And okay, well, number one, that's not your phone being stolen. That's you getting up and leaving your phone. Stuff like that happens all the time. People want to come in and report their phone being stolen because 9 times out of 10, insurance on these phones ain't going to give you a new phone if you just got up and left it at McDonald's. But if somebody stole it, you might can get a new phone. So that's that taking account for what you did, like DA was talking about earlier. You want to double down and blame somebody else. Then there's this classic one of the friend of a friend story. The cousin's buddy, the coworker's uncle, the guy someone met in the bar. Stories that never come from the actual witness, but only from someone repeating it. Those are almost always dead ends. Well, I know this guy and he saw this. I know it. If he said it, it's true. And then pretty soon they're telling a story like it was their own story.
Right.
Finally, there's the behavior of the person telling the story. They dodge questions. They get defensive. They refuse to provide details. They won't let anyone examine the evidence if they have any. They're more interested in the attention than the accuracy. That's a red flag every single time. And if you start asking questions like, well, where did it happen? Over on a friend of mine's place. Well, where's it at? Well, I don't want to tell you that because I don't want anybody down there investigate. That's not always 100%, but that's a pretty good indication that, because they just don't want to tell you where it happened because they don't want you going down there and poking around because they know you're not going to find anything. Spotting a hoax isn't about being cynical. It's about being careful. It's about protecting the integrity of the field. And it's about making sure the real encounters, the ones that deserve our time, don't get buried under a mountain of noise. So, yeah, like we said, overly dramatic and cinematic storytelling, which, we've hit a couple of those tonight. Stories that sound rehearsed or too polished. You and I both have heard more than our fair share of those. Lack of physical evidence when the story claims close contact. Like I said, all these things are not. It's like when we're doing an investigation, or like if I'm doing a car stop on somebody and I'm I'm out looking for drugs. Just because somebody's got a bunch of air fresheners in their car doesn't mean they're carrying drugs. Just because somebody is in a rental car doesn't mean that they're hauling drugs. Just because somebody's got a lot of overnight bags in their car. But you start adding all these things together, that totality of the circumstances, which is a phrase that DA and I had to use all the time. You start adding up all these things, and maybe one here or there is not a complete and total kill to the story, but you start having multiple of these things in one story. It's probably a squirrel, Miss Lene. It's Cap, so a butterfly probably flew past the window knowing him. But you start adding up all this stuff over, one story has like 5 or 6 of these tales in it, then you're probably getting down to the nitty gritty of it might not be true. So, and then
Cap's giving them what for tonight.
Yep.
And we've had people that we've talked to that I initially believed were completely credible, but then watch an interview with them a few months down the road, or even in a couple cases, a couple of years down the road, and the version of that story is barely recognizable anymore. And I'm not going to point again. I'm not pointing any names and pointing any fingers or naming any names. I don't intend to. I'm not going to start, but I'm seeing this happen. Unfortunately, with increasing regularity, things that just made no sense that they should have mentioned the first time they told the story, and then later they're adding details that are just off the charts, or doing stuff like claiming they jumped out of a deer stand 20 feet off the ground and ran off without breaking a leg. There's lots of details like that just clearly aren't real. But you just got to watch them. And another thing, if you're looking at a photo on Facebook, and if you right click on a photo, you can look at the metadata, and a lot of times the metadata is missing, and that's a pretty big red flag that that's probably an AI photo.
And another thing, like you talked about the photos and videos and all that stuff, looking at the metadata. Let's talk about how real encounters differ. Sorry, hard word to say, from the fabricated ones. And he just said on, real encounters, people when they're telling it, you can tell. Just anybody that's watched the show with Fred, any of the shows that Fred's been on, when he's told his, you can see how it affects him every single time.
And you don't have to be a trained investigator or a trained interrogator to spot these signs. People can't fake goosebumps. You can fake cry, but goosebumps is an involuntary reaction. You can't just make yourself get goosebumps. And there's others like the eye movement when somebody's telling a story. There's some people that you just can tell by their body language or lack thereof that they're telling a story, not reliving an experience.
Yeah, and when I think about my encounter, mine doesn't affect me the same way Fred's affects him, because my encounter was nowhere near as intense or as life-threatening as Fred's was.
Had that thing come through the back door after you, you'd have a pretty terrifying story.
Would have been a whole different story. But as it is, it was just, now, did it scare me when it happened? Yeah, it absolutely did. But all these years later, when I think about it, because you've asked me that question before, did I feel like, I was in any danger? And if you'd asked me that question then, I would have said yeah. But now, no, I don't think I was. So now, that's why my story doesn't affect me the same way Fred's does, because I've had years to process it from child to adult, and all the research and things that I've done into it. The thing is, it wasn't trying to get in the back door. Fred's was actually actively trying to take his head off with a rock the size of a basketball. That's a totally different, but even that being said, and I don't notice it, but DA has told me every time he's seen me tell the story, he can tell when I get to the parts that were when it happened. Then he can tell that I change my body posture, my body language, things like. But I don't think about it that way. It's because it's subconscious. Because
it's neurolinguistic programming. You can't hide it.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about, even though I'm not right now, I'm not physically scared telling that story. My mind switches back to when I was a kid and how scared I was at that particular time, even though it wasn't trying to do anything. And that's what we're talking about. It's not anything that you can hide or fake, because yes, you can cry on cue. Good actors do it all the time, like we said earlier. But things like that, you can't fake. You know, Fred's dog's coming in to check on him when he tells a story, because they can tell how his demeanor changes when he starts telling that story. You can't fake that.
Right.
You're not going to fool those dogs.
Right. The dogs are a great way to read somebody's mood, and those dogs react to him. You know, he is reliving a traumatic experience, and somebody that's telling a made up story is not reliving a traumatic experience. They are just regurgitating a story they created. But with Fred, you can see how it's had a powerful effect on him and the way he looks at the world.
And that's a great point, because Fred and I both look at these creatures two different ways. Now, had that thing tried to come in the back door and get me, I probably would share Fred's point of view. But it's just like, you'll get some, just like DA said, he's talked to many hunters who excuse me, who've had experiences and were just like, that's it, I'm done, I'm never going in the woods. People who have hunted their entire life. Same thing with like surfers that get attacked by sharks. I mean, the chances of that happening are very slim. But then, and some people look at it that way and say, well, this happened once, I'm not going to stop surfing just because this happens, I'm going to keep on going. Then you get some other people like, oh, well, I know my luck, and if I go back out there, I might not come back on the shore this next time, and then never go out in the water again. It's the same thing. If you have a situation that affects you like mine did when I was a kid, yeah, I was, that scared the crap out of me. But over time, it's like, which like VA knows, it didn't affect me negatively by going to go out in the woods, because
well, look at Doc.
Yeah.
The night the phrase "thermal don't lie" was born, how did he react? For hours, he was pacing his room, freaking out.
Yeah. Now,
he believed in cryptids up to that point, but that night he had a paradigm shift. And even now, when Doc talks about it, you can see he'll look at his hands. He gets a little shaky, a little tremble in his voice. Yeah. Yep. That night was a big. I don't want to say psychic break, but a big psychological moment for Doc.
Yeah, yeah. And I've said this, and I stand by it, and I think you agree with me. Had I had my encounter as an adult, I would have handled it 100% different than I did as a kid, where I could mentally bounce back from something like it. And not all adults who have a sighting, have to have that, but depending on the nature of the encounter, just like Fred's, his was not, ooh, it's looking at me through the window. I mean, he truly feels like he's lucky to get out of that. And if you listen to the story, you got to be kind of apt to believe that he was lucky to get out of it.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
Robbie, you want to lead us into the next segment?
I sure will. So now that we've covered how to spot a hoax, the red flags, the inconsistencies, the behaviors, it's time to look at some real world examples, because nothing drives the point home like seeing how these hoaxes actually fall apart. In segment 6, we're breaking down some of the most famous cryptid hoaxes of the last few decades and how investigators expose them piece by piece. DA, take it away.
These are the segment 6 is about famous hoaxes and how they were exposed. So when you talk about hoaxes in the cryptid world, it's easy to think of them as small things, a fake picture here, or a tall tale here, or a weird story there. But some folks' hoaxes grow big, some go national, and some end up fooling thousands of people before the truth finally comes out. And when you look at the biggest hoaxes of the last few decades, you start to see a pattern. They all begin the same way, with a big dramatic claim, a single piece of evidence, and a story that spreads faster than anyone can verify it. Perfect example we talked about, the Georgia freezer hoax. These two fellas claimed they had a Bigfoot body stored in a block of ice. They held press conferences, they made national news, they had people convinced they'd solved the mystery once and for all, but when the investigators finally got access to the body, it wasn't a creature at all. It wasn't a discovery, it was just a costume. Rubber, plastic, and lies. And the moment real scrutiny was applied, the story collapsed. Or look at countless fake dogman photos that circulate online. Most of them are AI composites or movie stills or manipulated images pulled from unrelated sources. They spread because they look dramatic, not because they hold up under examination. And every time someone slows down and checks the details, the lighting, the shadows, the anatomy, the flaws just jump out. And then there's some viral trail cam videos that pop up every few months. A blurry shape, a distorted figure, a creature that looks just real enough to get people talking. But when investigators track down the original source, it turns out the photo wasn't taken where the caption claimed at all. Or it was part of a Halloween display. Or it was just a complete AI fabrication and someone reposted it without context. And then there's the so-called Deep Mind Bigfoot study that we talked about last week. A completely fabricated scientific paper that never existed. No authors, no institutions, no data, just a fake PDF designed to look official. And yet people shared it as proof because it felt scientific. And even though it fell apart as soon as we started poking at it. What all these hoaxes have in common is simple. They were built to impress people who wouldn't look at it too close. They were designed to go viral, not to withstand an investigation. And the moment real investigators stepped in, the people who asked questions, checked the sources, and examined the evidence, the truth came out. These hoaxes didn't fail because they were sloppy. They failed because the truth doesn't bend. Evidence doesn't change. And facts don't move out of the way just because somebody wants attention. And every time a hoax is exposed, it reminds us why skepticism matters, why verification matters, and why slowing down and asking questions matters. Because the real encounters, the ones that can't be explained away, they deserve better than to be buried under a pile of these manufactured crap clickbait articles. And again, the one we profiled last week, that AI channel, if you look at the name of the channel, it's called AI Discovery. It is 100% AI. Every video on there is AI generated, and that is why channels like Cam's are being targeted, because those make money for YouTube, and channels like Cam, most of the money goes to Cam. I would not be shocked to find out every one of these AI channels that are cropping up with all these cryptid videos and exposed history videos and all that, all these clickbait videos. It wouldn't shock me to find out if every one of those channels isn't owned by YouTube itself.
Yep. I would, because even saying that, thinking back to Cam's little video he put out, I don't know if you watched it, but I watched it today, and he said that how YouTube is going through this is they have literally these were Cam's words. They have an AI program that's going through these channels and doing all the data on them. And one of the reasons that they gave him, because he appealed it, and YouTube, he said he got the video the other day, or the email the other day, saying YouTube is not going to uphold his appeal, and they're going to keep, they're not changing their mind, basically. But he said this AI program is going through these videos, and one of the reasons that Cam's video was hit, or his channel was hit, was it was repetitive, because he has no it's not like me and you sitting here talking and being engaged with it. It's just, some music, a one picture
as he reads
of
stories.
him reading stories. So it said it was repetitive. What was some other stuff? But basically, he said that it's got that YouTube has this AI program that's going through and reviewing all these channels. So it's just funny that that you say that after, and that's exactly what he said. That there's an AI channel that YouTube has that's going through and is doing the legwork on this, so to speak.
Exactly.
So,
and the one we talked about last week, I did some pretty heavy digging, and there was no DeepMind study. The DeepMind AI was never used for that. There's another one going around that said they use that same channel. They claim they use the Grok AI on what is it, Twitter? No, it's X now. But
yeah.
they claim they use the Grok AI, and again, it was never done. But they're citing examples, but then when it comes to the video, they say that's what did it, but all of it is just all AI generated stuff.
Yeah. And for those of you who was talking, the Steve Lilly is still monetized and up and going for now. He said, well, that's what he said for now. And he as it stands right now, he's keeping Dixie Cryptid. But anybody that wants to follow Cam, you don't mind me giving this out, right?
Definitely hand it out.
Anybody that wants to follow Cam and still get the same content that you were gonna get at Dixie Cryptid, go to either Spreaker or Spotify or Apple iTunes, any of that stuff, and look up What If It's True podcast. And that'll take you right to Cam, and everything that you find on his YouTube channel, you can find on that. Anybody that hadn't watched the video, he said if you want to follow him on Spreaker, he makes as much money on Spreaker as he does on YouTube. So that's good. If you don't follow him on that, it don't cost you anything. Set you up a Spreaker account and you can follow Cam, and you're helping him just as much there as you were on YouTube. So,
and to me, that's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
I think YouTube was tired of paying money to these big channels because those checks were probably pretty substantial.
Oh, yeah.
Our channel, we've got just over 10,000 subs. I barely make enough to keep the subscriptions up I need to run the show. So I know we're not making anything, but Cam, with close to pushing on, how many subscribers did he had?
He's close to 300,000. I think he's got like 272,000.
Yeah, he was pulling some bank every month, and YouTube didn't want to share that anymore. But I guarantee if those videos are still being, have commercials in them, even though he's demonetized.
Yep. So if you want to still support Cam, go follow him on Spreaker.
Absolutely.
You could also, DixieCryptid.com. That's still up. You can get all the stuff on there too. Might be some surprises coming pretty soon.
Just might. I don't want to give anything away yet, but might be some big surprises coming. But another thing I don't think we've really stressed enough in this with all these is these fakes, all these fakes coming out, these AI fakes, hoaxers coming out, they just damage the whole field. And I believe some of that is intentional. It will, as much people as you see all this fake stuff coming out and everybody saying, oh, it's fake, it's fake, it's fake. It keeps people who've had legit encounters from coming forward because they're just going to assume people are going to think that's fake too. It diminishes the field. And I really do believe a lot of that's deliberate. What do you think, Robbie?
I mean, if you're a logically thinking human being, you can't do anything but agree with that. Because that's like we do every time we're talking about a video or an investigation. We go where the evidence points us. And
right,
where does the evidence point us?
Absolutely. And that's why when we examine these AI videos, why the bulk of them, you can't give any credibility to them. And again, even these days, if somebody sends me a video to watch, I have got to know where that video came from. Because if you don't know the source, you can't trust it. You just can't. Because even if the video itself was real, like say for example, somebody in a national park filmed a bear, and somebody went into that video and altered the video to make that bear look more like a Bigfoot or a dog man. It's still a real video that was just altered. That's where guys like Thinker Thunker and MK Davis are much better at spotting stuff like that than we are. But it's that exact reason is why we have to be suspect of every piece of video and audio we're sent.
Yeah.
And it's not because we want to believe everything's fake, but we have to assume it is until we can prove otherwise.
Well, I mean, as bad as it is, I mean, that's the way the society and the world we live in now is. You have to assume it's that way until you can prove otherwise.
Yeah, just a guy, you ain't wrong. But this is something that I really want to reiterate again, just how much damage these hoaxes, whether they're intended to pollute the field or not. If it's just somebody trying to get clickbait or to get views on TikTok or whatever, even if they're just doing it for that, it still hurts the field, because when you damage the credibility of these stories, it's much harder to find the actual truth of it. And that's why we spend so much time vetting a lot of these stories. And there's a lot of stories that we've looked at and went, this seems legit, but we can't 100% verify it, so we didn't use it. It's not because we thought it was fake; it's because we couldn't prove it was real. And we try to limit the stories we talk about on the air to ones that we can verify the sources and that we believe with a large percentage of our belief that these stories are legit. We've been wrong a few times. We've put a few on the air that I later looked back and went, wish I'd have never put that one up. I've had a couple of people on the show I wish I could go back and never had on the show. But generally what I do is I go back and I take those videos down. So if you're looking at some of the old videos and you see and I'm not pointing out an episode number, but if you see 297, 298, 300, 299 got pulled for a reason, and 299 is probably there. I just made that number off the top of my head. So, but if you see the sequence of numbers and one's missing, that's probably why. I pulled the video because there was something about it I just didn't want to put out there anymore.
Yeah, and we've done that. We've had videos. We've been backstage afterwards going, why'd we do that? But
yeah, yeah, that's happened a few times. Even after ourselves, we're like, we talked to somebody and we agreed to bring them on the show. They sounded great. Yep. Until we got them on the show, and then the needle goes from normal to
needle
pretty
got pegged.
fast. Needle got pegged quick, and that's happened more than once. And those videos tend to disappear.
Yeah.
We got about a minute until we've got to go take a commercial break again. Miss Lene's been reminding me. Thank you for the heads up. So as Race would say, we are going to take a pause to pay some bills. Another great time to stretch your legs, walk around, to pet the dog, scratch the cat, go to the bathroom, whatever you need to do. And we'll be back in just a few minutes after these words from our sponsors.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unxmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unxmedia.com or amazon.com. In a world where monsters still walk the earth, one author dares to face them. From the brutal cryptid horror of the Apex Predator series to the Ozark legends that stalk the night in Lakeview Man, from the elite warriors of codename Wild Hunt to the relentless investigations of the Nightmare Hunter and the frontier terror of Dark Frontiers. When the Dead Rise, the Ragnarok Rising saga unleashes pure zombie apocalypse fury. And across the stars, war rages in the Lost Legion and Man's Marauders. And in the realm of myth and steel, the world of Vanguard calls to those born for legend. Cryptids, zombies, sci-fi warfare, epic fantasy. This is the universe of D.A. Roberts.
And we are back, folks. Thank you guys for sticking with us, and we're going to jump right back into the middle of this. So tonight, now that we've looked into some of the biggest hoaxes and how they fell apart, it's time to talk about the fallout. Because hoaxes don't just fool people, they hurt the field. They make real witnesses hesitate, they make real evidence harder to find, and they give skeptics ammunition to dismiss everything, even the cases that deserve attention. So in the next segment, we're breaking down the real-world damage caused by hoaxes and why cleaning up misinformation is just as important as investigating the unknown. Robbie, you want to take this one away?
Sure. So up to this point, we've talked about how hoaxes start, how they spread, how they fall apart, but we need to talk about the part most people never think about. And that part is the damage that they do. Hoaxes aren't harmless. They're not just jokes. They're not just internet noise. They have real consequences for people and for research, or for real research. Every time a hoax goes viral, it pushes legitimate encounters further into the background. It buries the credible cases under a pile of nonsense. It makes it harder for investigators to separate the signal from the noise. In the field where good evidence is already rare, that's a serious problem. Hoaxes also make witnesses hesitate. Imagine you're someone who genuinely saw something strange, something that scared you, something you can't explain. You finally work up the courage to tell a story, and the first thing that you see online is people laughing at the last hoax that made the rounds. You see all the jokes, you see all the memes, you see all the ridicule, and suddenly you don't want to come forward anymore. I can attest to that from personal experience. Hoaxes don't just waste time, they silence people. They also contaminate data. Researchers build patterns based on reports. They look for consistencies in behavior, in behavior, geography, timing, and witness descriptions. When hoaxes flood the system, those patterns get distorted. The data becomes unreliable. And the real clues, the ones that could actually lead somewhere, they get lost in all that noise. And then there's the credibility issue. Every hoax gives skeptics ammunition. Every fake photo becomes a talking point. Every exposed lie becomes a reason for people to dismiss the entire subject, even the cases that deserve the serious attention. Hoaxes don't just hurt people who fall for them. They hurt the people that are trying to find the truth. They hurt the people who've had real encounters. They hurt investigators who take this seriously, and they hurt the field as a whole. That's why calling out hoaxes isn't negativity. It's not gatekeeping. It's not being a killjoy. It's protecting the integrity of the work. It's making sure that the real stories, the ones that matter don't get drowned out by manufactured noise. Because if we want the truth to stand out, we have to clear the way, or clear away everything and anything that is going to get in the way. And
Yeah, you're absolutely right, man.
yeah,
I mean, how much have we had to filter out just to try to keep the sighting databases pure for even our like underground theories,
right. I mean, and that's
the zone theories.
that's the whole crux of the situation is just like it said there. I mean, how many people out there have had credible encounters that are just like, I'm not putting myself out there for that. I know, because I was one of them for a long time. I don't want to be ridiculed. I don't want to, be the butt of the joke at the water cooler at the office. I don't want to be the crazy Bigfoot guy. I don't want to be the crazy dogman guy. I don't want to be the guy who sees werewolves and monsters outside. I don't want to be this. I don't want to be that. That's to me, and I know it's bad that it's hurting the field in general, but to me, that's the part that ticks me off more than anything. Is there good people out there who keep their mouth shut because they don't want to be, they don't want to be made fun of by idiots who, and maybe idiots is not the best term, because they're going along with what everybody, the main popular theory is that they don't exist. So they're just going along with that. But those people who have legitimately had encounters that could help the field, that could, give us more credible sightings, don't come forward because of this crap. Because there's
Exactly.
The idiots that I should be talking about are the ones that manufacture these hoaxes. They're like, watch this will be funny. No, it's not funny. I mean, that'd be like me going out and staging a car wreck just because I wanted to be the hero and save somebody. But while I'm staging it, somebody says, "Oh, there's a wreck up there. I better turn around and go the other way." And they turn around in front of somebody and get T-boned and get hurt because they thought what I was doing out there was real. I mean, I know that's an extreme example, but it's the same principle. You're doing something to give yourself a momentary glory, but you don't know the other people you're affecting. Or that person turns around, and because they had to turn around and didn't get to keep going that way, they're going on down the road, and somebody pulls out in front of them and they hit them, and it, miles down the road, but they shouldn't have been going that way. They should have been going the other way. Same thing, somebody who has a legitimate encounter that is worked up the courage to come talk to somebody about it. Then all of a sudden they see all this stuff, and, all these people that are hoaxing and doing all this stuff. And they're like, well, I don't want to be part of that.
It's like the old story of the little boy that cried wolf. After some people have heard hoaxes so many times, even when somebody legitimately has a real sighting, they don't want to believe it because they've heard all these hoaxes before.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a huge difference between healthy skepticism and cynicism. I don't really think I'm cynical that all of the that I don't believe everything in the field is a hoax. I truly believe these things exist. And why? Because of time spent in the field and my own personal sightings. So, but I have a healthy skepticism when it comes to a lot of these videos, and unfortunately, more times than not, that skepticism is what helps us find out that video was a fake.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like you said, you have to be that way. And could that cause us to miss some legitimate stuff?
I'm sure it has.
Yeah, I'm sure too. But I mean, that's kind of the situation we're in now.
Lone Queen, exactly.
Yeah,
and that's I think one of the reasons that I think Robbie and I and Doc and Steve. I think that's one of the reasons we have one of the strongest cases of sightings that we've gone through, because between the four of us, we've got decades of being able to spot, false reports and and people that are being deceptive. I think it gives us an edge when it comes to digging these out.
Yeah. And, just like when we were in Combs Ferry that night, when we found that deer hide, I sat there and I already knew what I believed. You knew what you believed. But Steve sat there and methodically, as a nurse that's been in a trauma unit in an ER, he's sitting there methodically, and you could see you literally almost could see the gears working in his head, thinking, okay, what could cause that? Okay, that could cause that. What out of the things that could cause that do we have here that possibly could have done it? And you could see him working through all that, but that's what DA
and him repeating the phrase, "This took hands. This took hands."
Yeah, but that's what we're talking about. Is it possible that people could have been in there before us and put that up there? 100% it's possible.
It's possible.
Likely? Is it likely? Probably not, because of the time we were in there, nobody knew we were there.
Yeah.
So
we didn't announce we were going to be there.
Yeah. It's
so if somebody was hoaxing that, they did it on the rare hope that somebody would come across it.
But that's one of the things that Steve went over in his mind. He's like, okay, because he turned around after he threw the few expletives at me. He was discussing it with me, and he was like, okay, yes, somebody could have done this, but who knew we were out here besides the people in our group? I said, nobody. And he said, okay, so we're looking at a random chance that some people were hoping that somebody would come through here at, after midnight and just happen to find, because Wyatt can tell you this was not something that was just going to be seen. It was not put where just anybody was going to see it. I just happened to be looking at him, talking to him, and saw a dark blob in the tree and said, hold up a second, Wyatt. And Wyatt he's in there, and he will tell you this is 100% how this happened. He was talking. I turned to look at him to see what he was, or to hear what he was saying, because we were talking quietly. And I said, hold up a second, Wyatt, move up a little bit. Because I just saw a dark shape in the tree, cut my light on. And this is not like it was in a tree right next to the path. It was probably 20 feet off of the path with multiple other trees around it. So for somebody to do that in the hopes that we would find it.
Well, that second one that Wyatt's talking about here, the second one that we saw when me, you, and Doc were there.
Yeah.
And Wyatt, that one, I couldn't reach it. It was above my head in that small tree, and the branches were too small to support anything but a bird. There's no way that was a mountain lion or anything like that, because the branches were just little tiny branches on a sapling, and it was just kind of hanging in those branches, twisted around those branches, probably 7-8 feet off the ground.
Yep. So, yeah, is it possible? Yeah. But is it likely? Not very. I wish we'd have had thermal that night.
Yeah, I do too. But this is why debunking hoaxes protects real research, because when we found that, the first thing we did was try to eliminate everything it could be, and it left us with more questions than answered.
Yeah.
Because if we'd have done that ourselves, put that up there, that would be us being no better than any of the hoaxers. But I've got 7 people that saw it, and it was not there when we walked up. And we've got video of it. That was not done by us. And the more you look back at it, it still gives me chills when I think about it. I feel it on the back of my neck right now. And then we found the tree trout, on the other side of the trail, not 15 yards away. And to me, that was the moment when we were crossing a line we weren't supposed to cross.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back, probably would have been a good indicator, like maybe we should go back to the other way and go to the boat. But we didn't. We didn't. We ain't the brightest bulbs in the pack. And we've got 7 witnesses that all saw the same thing. And believe me, most of those witnesses are either active or retired law enforcement. They're not gonna make that up. Some of those guys, still well, Robbie's still active, Estrella's still active. Those guys got way too much to risk on making up a stupid story like that because it'd make them look bad in front of defense attorneys. They're not going to stake their name on making that up, and documenting stuff like that is why we do this. So we can say without a doubt we know that this was not done by us. Can we say 100% that we actually saw Bigfoot wrapping around a tree? No, we can't say that. But short of another person being out there on a peninsula we had to get to by boat in the middle of the night, short of another person being out there to put that up for us to find, there's really no other explanation. And nobody knew we were coming. We came in by boat in the middle of the night.
Yep. And like I said, I mean, if it was somebody, they would have put it in a little bit more of a obvious place, not 20 feet off the path, hung up in 8 feet in a tree, 7.5, 8 feet in a tree, on just the hopes that me and Wyatt were walking, and I happened to look at him just at the right time to see that dark shape hanging in the tree, because that's all it was. Because we didn't have our headlamps on at the time, so it was just But it's like y'all have heard me say this with tracking. It's about seeing the things that aren't supposed to be there, that don't match up and don't line up. And there was just something in the shape of that did not match what was supposed to be around it. So it just piqued my curiosity. And the look on Wyatt's face when that headlamp come on and we both saw what it was, he turned around and looked at me like, oh boy. And I'm like, hey, DA, you might want to come back here and take a look at this.
Well, since that night, Steve hasn't set foot in the woods with us.
Nope.
He's done. He's like, boys, I'll drink with you. I'll meet you for drinks, but I'm not going out there again.
And there would be those that would argue that maybe Steve's the smartest one of the bunch.
He just might be.
Yep. I mean, and yeah, me and Wyatt looked at each other like, okay, that's not normal.
Yeah, that's anything but normal.
Yeah. I think I looked at Wyatt and I said, have you ever seen anything like that? And he's like, nope, never have. And now we've seen it twice.
And we've also found dismembered deer in hard to get to places. Yeah, it's not some place that a poacher would just bring a carcass and tear it apart. These are not easy to get to places where we found these dismembered deer. Angela says Steve's reaction to that night's way too real for him. Yeah, Steve still gets shook up when we talk about it. Mm-hmm. And Doc still gets shook up when we bring up the thermal don't lie. Robbie, you want to lead us into the next one?
Okay. Now that we've talked about the damage hoaxes cause, the noise, the confusion, the hesitation that they create, it's important to end on a different note. Because despite all the fakes, despite all the misinformation, despite all the noise, there's still cases out there that stand up to scrutiny. In segment 8, we're looking at the encounters that don't fall apart, the ones with multiple witnesses, physical evidence, consistent behavior, and no easy explanation. The cases that remind us why this field is worth studying in the first place. DA, take us into segment 8.
Yeah, we'll call this the 10% that still stands, and it may actually be more than 10%. But the problem is there's just so much of that AI crap floating around. So I just kind of arbitrarily picked 10%. After spending an entire episode talking about these hoaxes and how they start, though, how they spread, how they fall apart, it's important to end with something that a lot of people forget. Not every sighting is a hoax. Not every encounter is a misidentification. And not every story collapses under scrutiny. There's a percentage, might be a small one, but a real one, that holds up. These are the cases where the witness isn't looking for attention. They're not trying to go viral. They're not selling books, pushing the channel, or chasing fame. They're just people who saw something they can't explain and wish they hadn't. These are the encounters with multiple witnesses who didn't know each other. Encounters backed by physical evidence, tracks, hair, audio, footprints, impressions in the ground, environmental disturbances. Encounters reported by hunters, law enforcement officers, firefighters, park rangers, military personnel, people trained to observe, trained to stay calm, and trained to report accurately. These are the cases where the behavior described is consistent with other reports across different regions and different decades, where the creatures act like an animal, not a movie monster, where the details line up with known biology, not fantasy. These are the cases where the investigators go in expecting to debunk something and walk out with more questions than answers, which happened to us on a number of occasions. And that's the part the hoaxes can't touch. Hoaxes fall apart the moment you look close. But these cases, the more you look, the stranger they get. Tracks that show weight distribution consistent with a large biped. Hair samples that don't match known wildlife. Hair samples that have clear hair shafts. Audio recordings that don't line up with any regional species, kind of like the recording from down by Robbie's house. Witnesses who describe the same patterns of behavior without ever having heard each other's stories. These are the encounters that keep our research going. These are the ones that make seasoned investigators stop and listen. These are the ones that remind us why the field matters, why the search matters, and why the truth is worth digging for. Because even if 90% of what hits the internet is just junk, that remaining 10%, that's where the mystery lives. And that's the part that's worth studying. These multiple witness encounter stories with consistent details, the physical evidence that's clearly not hoaxed, and all of the reports that we get from credible sources. Robbie, what do you think?
Well, look at the behavioral consistencies across regions. Cases that investigators try to debunk but couldn't, like you said, and walk out with more questions than they do answers. The plausible biological nature versus fantasy. We've talked in depth about just look in nature. If you got questions about some of this stuff, all you got to do is look at what we already know about the known world, and You can pretty much come up with a plausible theory of why they do or why things are, or to explain some of the things that not everything, but a good bit of them. Like you mentioned the audio recording down the road from my house. I just this past weekend went to the Bigfoot Museum in Georgia, so they've got a whole big section on the Sierra sounds, and they've got multiple setups where you can listen to it on headphones, and that's the first time I've ever got to listen to it isolated on headphones versus just listening to it on our show. And it's amazing to listen to some of those sounds that they recorded. When you listen to those sounds and then you listen to that wherever that guy was, it was a linguistic specialist.
He was a U.S. Navy cryptolinguist.
Yeah. And for him to say that, and this is somebody who made his career in doing this kind of stuff, and him to say that there are sounds above and below what is capable of a human to duplicate, and it doesn't match any known species that's cataloged. I mean, stuff like that, you have to sit up and take notice of stuff like that.
And that it had all the earmarks of a language.
Yeah. And, to listen to Ron tell that story and listen to those sounds as he's telling the story, I mean, it's amazing to think about some of the stuff that I think stuff like that is the stuff that doesn't get enough attention. Because, I mean, to me, besides the Patty video, the Sierra sounds are some of the best evidence that we've ever
I would
had.
agree. I would definitely agree.
And, it's just like, and Ron's so down to earth. I mean, he's probably one of the most famous people in our field, but he's so down to earth and so, I've met him in person a couple of times. He's been on the show. Just a great down to earth guy, and you can tell he just wants the information out there. He's experienced stuff that some of us would just almost trade a body part to experience. And it's amazing to hear this stuff. If you ever get a chance to go to that museum, where you can listen to that stuff and hear it so clear on, with just the earphones on. You're not there, you don't have any outside noise that can interfere with it. It's amazing to listen to it that way.
And if you can't go to that museum, you can find several videos of the Sierra sounds on YouTube, and put on a good set of headphones and listen to them. Close your eyes and really listen to it. The Sierra sounds really, they clearly have captured something very unique.
Mm-hmm. And Ron says the same thing about that we've said about, the stuff we found. He's like, he goes into such detail about how hard it was to get in there, horses having trouble in certain places. And he's like, and he says all that. He's like, I tell you this to tell you how hard it is to get, number one, how far back it was. And number two, how hard it was to get in there. So for somebody to be up there to do that when we were up there is almost impossible.
Yeah.
And
they would have to have known where they were going to be up there to fake it.
Yep. And so we say that's why these unexplained things like the Sierra sounds, like the Patterson Gimlin film, that's why these are so important, is because number one, they've stood up to all the scrutiny for all these years. I think those are the two oldest pieces of evidence we've got, right?
Yeah.
Modern evidence.
Yeah. Right.
And they both stood the test of time. The harder
Absolutely.
people, in my opinion, the harder people try to debunk these things, the more credible they get.
Right. And folks, those two pieces, like Robbie said, they really do kind of stand alone. And even with that recent attempt to debunk the PG film, I really think all they did was showed their own ignorance.
Yep.
I don't think they debunked a dang thing, to be honest. And when you want to debunk some of these videos, just look at the consistency of what we talk about on this show. We talk about patterns. We talk about consistency. We talk about details. Look at the behavioral patterns that have been verified across the country. And if they're talking about stuff in their sighting that exist way outside those behaviors that we've observed, that's a red flag. Maybe it doesn't necessarily mean the story is wrong. It means it's a red flag. It means it's something you need to pay attention to. Talking to guys like Robbie here. I mean, this dude over here is a tracker. He tracks people for his department. So when he looks at a track like that track I got up in the Smokies, when I showed him that track, he didn't just go, "Ooh, that's a cool Bigfoot track." He actually sat there, blew that up on the laptop screen just as big as we could blow it up, and he started talking about details, because those are details that stood out, because they don't exist in a bare double stamp. They don't exist in somebody that just has a flat piece of wood that they're faking tracks with. He started talking about movement in that track of a real creature. And that to me, that's why I really wish I could have casted that track. But like I said, it was on a steep incline. But still, the high res images I took, those details are still there. And for Robbie to look at that picture and to analyze that picture, to me, that was just verification of everything that happened to us, because he wasn't looking at a picture that somebody who knew nothing about track morphology would make. Because if I went out to fake a track, if I got like a plaster cast of a Bigfoot, press it into the ground, that would probably be all I would know to do. I mean, well, I'd know more now, but when I was first starting out, or when I was young, you just make a print and it's a footprint and everybody goes, "Oh, it's a footprint." But I didn't know about pressure ridges. I didn't know about stride and weight positioning. I didn't know about any of this. And Robbie pointed every bit of that out in that track.
Well, and, something that I've said it on the show before, a good way to tell is most of the time when you get somebody who's faking a print, the toes are not going to be splayed. They're going to be perfectly in line like this. But like the one on DA's, the toes were splayed. And the reason I know they were splayed out is because the individual toes where they contacted the grass, that grass was still flat, but what was in between was still sticking up. So if that had been a plaster cast or a piece of wood or something that was faking it, the grass would have been flat throughout the whole thing. But you could clearly look in that video and see, like where the big toe was, all the grass that was underneath that was laying flat. The outline around it was raised up, and what was in between the toes was raised up. That doesn't happen on a fake print unless they've got, and it would be really hard to get something that was rigid enough and with the toes splayed out like that, and it'd be rigid enough to put a track that deep into that hard of a ground and make it look that real. You know, so things like that are what you have to look for. And that's, like he said, that's, you know, because we were on his laptop, and I was like, okay, look, see the grass in between the toes is still sticking straight up, like, because it was sticking up between the toes where it was standing there. You can see
the
how
mid-tarsal break.
Yeah, the mid-tarsal break. You could see, I pointed out dwell time. You could say, I told him, I said, you know, standing there for a while. And he's, well, how do you know that? And I said, well, look around the edges of the back part of the foot. You could see where it kind of tilted back and forth like that a little bit. The grass still stayed where it was at, where it was supposed to be around the front of the foot. But and think about it, you know, if you stand somewhere for a long period of time, you're shifting your weight. That is just a natural behavior. And that's called dwell time. You can tell if something just stepped there and stayed there for a little bit, or if you can tell if it stayed there and watched. And I think that one stayed there and watched that cabin for a little while.
And the dwell time checks out because that was right where the spot that was between the first and second floor where something struck the side of the cabin, and where my wife was growled at through the window of that cabin that I didn't realize at the time she said something growled at me, because I said, oh, it's probably just a bear. But I went out there the next day. There was no tree outside that window, and that window was about 12 feet off the ground.
Yep. Have we done a full show on tracking? Bounty hunting Bear was asking. I think we have.
I think we've done a partial one. Maybe we ought to plan another one on tracking. I should get like that picture of my track and have other folks send in pictures of tracks, and just we'll go over, you know, different the morphology of the tracks. And it's too bad Dr. Meldrum isn't here. It'd be a great one to have him on, but unfortunately we've lost him. But yeah, that'd be a great show to do with him. But maybe you know, get you and maybe someone else that's good at tracking, as I'm okay at tracking, but I learned more in an hour with Robbie than I'd learned my whole life. So, you know, Robbie's definitely far better at this than I am. But yeah, maybe we'll do a show here in not so distant future just on tracking. So, folks, you know, we talked about all night tonight about why people make these hoaxes, about how they make these hoaxes, about the effect these hoaxes have, and now we've talked about quite a bit about how to spot them, and even the aftermath, what these hoaxes can cause within the field. So hopefully y'all can go into this a little better prepared, with a little more understanding of what you're looking at. And that's not to say that every encounter you find or every story you hear is going to be fake. I'm not saying that at all. This hopefully will give you guys some of the tools to make those decisions for yourself, where you can look at these and go, yeah, this one, this there's no consistency in this story. It's changed 2 or 3 times, or this image is too perfect. Now that I've blown it up, I can see, you know, the hair isn't right, or the shadows don't match. Now that you know what to look for in the anatomy of a hoax. And that really brings us full circle. I mean, we've cleared the noise, the fakes, the fabrications, and what's left is the part that matters, the part that deserves real investigation, the part that keeps this field alive. So next time we're going to go deeper into that 10%, the encounters that resist explanation, the cases that hold up under scrutiny, and the reports that even seasoned investigators can't easily dismiss. But for tonight, we've done what we set out to do. We separated the truth from the noise. Tonight we peeled back that curtain on something most people never even think about. Not the creatures, not the encounters, not the mysteries in the dark timber, but the noise, the clutter, the manufactured stories that tend to drown out the truth. Because hoaxes spread fast, faster than the facts do, faster than the evidence does, and faster than the people that are trying to do this work the right way. And every time a fake story goes viral, it pushes the real ones a little farther into the shadows. It makes honest witnesses hesitate. It makes investigators have to work twice as hard, and it muddies the water for everyone who's genuinely trying to understand what's out there. But here's the thing, though. The truth doesn't just disappear because someone lies louder. It doesn't vanish because somebody wants attention, and it doesn't crumble because somebody faked a photo or wrote a dramatic headline. The truth is patient. It waits for the people willing to slow down, ask the right questions, and look past the noise. And that's what we do here. We don't chase every story, we don't fall for every headline, and we don't let the loudest voices drown out the real ones. We look for the cases that hold up, the witnesses that stand firm, and the evidence that doesn't fall apart under scrutiny. The encounters that stay solid no matter how hard you push on them. Because that's where the real mystery lives. Not in the hoaxes, not in the hype, but in that percentage of encounters that refuse to be explained away. So as we wrap up tonight's show, remember this. You don't find the truth by believing everything. You find it by questioning everything, especially the things that want your attention the most. So thank you guys for spending your evening with us. Hope you guys stay safe out there, stay sharp, and as always, keep your head on a swivel, because this is the Nightmare Hunters, and we're not just looking for the noise. We're looking for the truth. And we appreciate you guys spending your evening with us, and we hope you guys will like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Maybe even join the channel, because that's how we keep the lights on around here. And if you enjoy this kind of content where we're presenting factual-based arguments and only profiling the real stories, the stories that make sense, the stories that fit the patterns, then hopefully you will share this channel with people that enjoy this kind of content. And don't forget, we've been showing them all through the night. Check out our affiliates, the good folks at Dark Angel Medical. Doc's an awesome dude. They got 212 saves. That's people alive because of his company. Check out darkangelmedical.com. Use discount code Cryptid20 for 20% off your entire order. Fantastic company. Check out the good folks over at SigwoArms.com. Sigwo makes fantastic firearms. They also make their own ammo, and they've got a full line of your favorite brands, and even Whisper Pickles suppressors. Got one on my AR, and I really like it. Check them out, SigwoArms.com. Use discount code BIGFOOT5 for 5% off your entire order. And if you're a veteran or a first responder, make sure you let them know, because they'll bump that up to 10. And that makes a big difference, believe me. So get a hold of them, tell the Codys we sent you, and they're the folks that will make your Dark Frontiers or your Codename Wild Hunt AR uppers or lowers, or just pretty much anything else. They can put it on about anything. So let them know and tell them we sent you. And also, check out the awesome folks over at Scallywag Tactical. Make some of the best knives in the business. They've got a whole new catalog full of blades, and a bunch of them I would really like to have. So check them out. Use discount code DARoberts10 for 10% off your order. And we've got some talent in the field here. Robbie is a hell of a writer, and I have been proud to watch his progress as a writer over the last year since he published his first novel. He's got 10 books now. 10 books in a year. That's wicked impressive. He's a fantastic writer. He's evolving so fast, and I really, really wish I had seen my own writing evolve that quickly. And he's just, well, I'm glad I could help. And I wish I'd had someone that in my career that had nudged me along that way, because he's picking up a lot of lessons that it took me years to learn. And his writing's evolving because of it. His characterizations are fantastic. He's got some awesome books, and you've been seeing them pop up in the chat. You can check out all his books on Amazon in Kindle, print, and audio formats. And check out the books also of Luca T. Jacobs. She writes the same kind of genres we do. Fantastic writer, just a wonderful lady. And she's got, about 15 books out now, the Nicole Beretti series and a couple others.
Yeah, I think it's 15.
She's a great writer. Check her books out. I know you're really going to like them. You can find all of her works at lucatjacobs.com or on amazon.com, also in Kindle, print, and audio formats. And little old Doc couldn't be here tonight. What's that, Robbie?
I was just going to say, some people were asking, this is the anniversary edition of the author's cut of Silver Star, new cover, hardback edition. So those are available now. I've had several people asking it. when you pull up my stuff, it's just going to show Silver Star. But if you go to the hardcover, that's what you're going to see, and that's what you're going to get. I just went back and tightened up some stuff. And when I first wrote the book, DA and I had no clue or no ideologies of how we were going to tie everything in. So a few little fixes to stuff like that kind of make some more stuff make sense. So,
Don, yes, they can, as long as they're not prohibited in your state and you have someone with an FFL to ship to. So yeah, they can ship those anywhere, and they've got really good deals on them. Yeah, just check them out. They got a full line. But also check out Doc's books. Doc's got his first book out, about ready to release his second. He writes in the Western horror genre, like my Dark Frontier series. Doc's done a great job for his first book, and his second book is looking to be just as good, if not better. So check his out. The links have been popping up. It's a dark part of the Dark Frontiers universe. It's called.
The first one's called Dark Frontiers Vampire Chronicles: Angels of the Wilderness.
That's right. I always get that mixed up. Angels of the Wilderness. It's number 2 currently in Western horror. What's his second one already called?
I don't know if he's 100% on.
I thought he was still kind of up in the air on the title.
He's got one bookmarked, pardon the pun, but I don't know if that's what it's going to be. So I don't want to confuse anybody if he decides to go with a different one. But basically that one, where this one was in Springfield and Redemption, the first one, this one's going to be in Deadwood.
And Doc does know his history when it comes to the Old West. So you're really gonna enjoy some of the characters that show up, and you're gonna enjoy the scenery. So check out all of Doc's books, also on Amazon and Kindle print, and hopefully soon to be in audio. We're working on that. And if you like all their books, check mine out as well. I've got two books that are currently new releases, all released within the last 30 days. I have the newest series, Hangman's Legacy: The Mount Dora Incident. It's currently number 1 in Western horror, and then I just released the most recent Wild Hunt book, codename Wild Hunt Leviathan Down, and it's not currently number 1 in Monsters and Creatures. And I hope you guys will check those out. I'm really, really happy that both of those are doing well. And you can find all of my books in Kindle print and audio, except for the newest Wild Hunt book. I'm still working on getting the audio out on that. I've been having some issues with Amazon, so hopefully I'll have that straightened out in the next day or two, and we'll have the audio out on that as well. But you can check all of my books out on Amazon and check them out at daroberts.net. So, folks, thank you guys for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. Hope we were thought provoking tonight. And as Nance says on her channel, absence of proof is not proof of absence, and that's 100% right. But be skeptical, folks. Challenge everything, because there's a lot of fakes out there, but they're not all fakes. And there's quite a few believers in this audience because they've had their own encounters. So for you all, no proof is necessary because you saw it. And just be aware, because AI is prevalent and there are hoaxers. And not everything is there to really help the field. Some of it, I believe, is deliberately there to hurt it. So I hope you guys have approached this subject with a whole new eye, a keen set of ideas, and a skeptical mind, and together we'll solve this mystery. We'll bring this rascal home. So as we close her out, we're going to close her out with a toast. I got myself a mason jar full of sweet tea. It doesn't get much hillbillier than that. So Robbie, would you mind taking us out with the toast tonight?
Sure. So, everybody, don't matter what you're drinking, raise a glass with us. This is for all those who have gone on before us. Some of them might have just left the bar. Some of them might have left the world. But we'll see them again sometime. So raise a glass and sing along with me, or say it along with me. But since it fell unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be to you all. Good night, everybody. See you next Wednesday. Sláinte.
Sláinte.